Hello and good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Ending Well with Minnelle. My name is Minnelle Williams. I am the pre-planning funeral director at the New Haven Funeral Center. I like to call myself the end-of-life expert because, as some of you might know, I have done lots of study in the field of end of life. Oh, that was different. Can you hear me now? Oh, there we go. I realized what had happened. My apologies. All right. Alas. So, welcome to another episode. Tonight, I'm very happy to have Loriann joining me. We will be talking about death and taxes, which we know are the two guarantees in life. So, tonight, we're going to go over some details, and it's perfectly timed because it is tax time. So many of us are in the mindset of taxes, but we might not have done taxes for someone who has passed. So it's good for us to have this opportunity to talk about it, to learn about it. Feel free to join the conversation and ask any questions. And if you can see the ticker down below, if you have any questions for me about pre-planning, the contact information is right there. Please go ahead and reach out. I'm here to serve and to help in any way that I can. All right. So without further ado, let me invite Loriann to the stage. Hello, welcome. Let me bring us in nice and close.
Hi, Minnelle.
How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful.
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate the Raptors love tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate it. All right. So let's start talking. First, can you just introduce yourself for those? I know you've been on a couple times before, but
Yeah.
introduce yourself for those who aren't aware of who you are.
Sure. My name's Loriann. I've been doing income taxes for around 12 years. I've now founded Right Business Solutions for 5 years.
Mhm.
So that's great.
Mhm.
I do everything income tax related, and I service all of Canada, so all the provinces and territories. What's good about my service is that it's primarily done online.
Mhm.
So I'm able to expand my reach, and my clients are able to do their taxes from the comfort of their own home, which is
Mhm.
very convenient.
Mhm.
So that's a little bit about my business. Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Thank you very much for sharing.
thank you.
I will just say, Loriann is wonderful. Please reach out if you need help with your taxes, especially now as we're rushing.
Yeah,
Speaking about current events really quickly, I
sure.
know that in Toronto right now, there's a lot of fears happening because of the strike. Can you just clarify for people? We can still file our taxes, right? There's no
Yes.
issue in that way. Can you just clarify?
Yes, so there's no issues with filing your taxes. I'm able to still get authorization to be an authorized representative on accounts. I'm able to e-file no problem. And
Mm,
right now, the CRA, they're taking the stance that the deadline will still remain April
mhm,
30th.
mhm,
So most definitely reach out if you need to get your taxes done. However, their support, so their phone lines and any other support will not be available or at severe reduced, you could say, timelines.
Deadlines?
So be
Yeah.
prepared for a
Yeah.
long wait if you're trying to get information.
And if you've tried to call CRA before, you know that it was already something you would wake
Oh,
up in the morning and do, get your breakfast,
yes,
start living your life, before you get an answer. So
yes,
imagine now in this situation. I think it will be good for people like yourself because a lot more people will be reaching out to professionals now, just because if you're accustomed to doing it last minute by yourself,
yeah,
there's no real support. So now we're reaching out to professionals. So you guys
yes,
must be very busy. Thank you.
very busy. Yes,
Okay, so let's get into the first question. Now, you've been doing this for a while. You said 12 years. You've had Right Business Solutions, excuse me,
yes.
for 5 years. What are some common, for us, what are some common issues, some common problems that you see when people are filing their taxes?
So I would say generally people they don't know their numbers.
Mm.
So if you don't know where you stand, if you don't know how much you earn, um, it becomes very difficult to do tax
Mhm.
planning.
Yes.
And then when it is time to file your taxes, you may be in the position wondering, why do you owe? What can you do? But I believe at the time that you're doing your taxes, it's actually far that time to plan and to implement strategies has already passed. Yes.
Yes.
So knowing your numbers, knowing your tax situation specifically, um, I find that a lot of clients are not prepared,
Hmm.
and
How?
that ties in good record keeping.
Okay.
If you're a business owner, keeping a track of all your expenses,
Mhm.
your revenue, your invoices, um, that's typically another mistake that I see business owners
Mhm.
have, because the CRA, um, as most people know, they can audit you or
Mhm.
review you within 6 years of a particular tax year. So having good record, keeping your receipts, keeping your evidence and proof is
Mhm.
definitely vital.
Yes.
Um, Another thing I would say is I would say if you're a business owner, um, there's a lot of misconception when it comes to HST.
Mhm.
So knowing when to apply for one,
Mhm.
knowing what the threshold is, when to register for an HST number, does
Mhm.
it even apply to you? You know, those things. So a lot of misconceptions and just misunderstanding to what it means to have an HST number. And
Mhm.
what people don't realize that once you get an HST number, even if you're not collecting HST, you're still required to file an HST return.
Yes.
So a lot of people are not aware of that.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, yeah, and I think one more thing,
Yes.
for just like the regular individual, they don't really think about the impacts of having multiple jobs or multiple sources of income.
Mhm.
If you have those conditions, you may be subject to paying taxes
Yes.
because the CRA looks at your total income
Mhm.
to determine what tax bracket you fall in and to
Mhm.
determine your taxable income and what percentage tax rate applies to you. So a lot of people, they think that, you know, taxes is coming from my pay. They're doing that every 2 weeks. Isn't that enough?
Mm-mm.
But the answer is no
Yes.
when looking at your total taxable income.
I just had that
Yeah.
conversation with someone today, and there is nothing like the surprise at tax time for those who
Yes.
haven't had a chance to plan. And let this be a reminder. I just started reading, or just I'm reading the book right now, The 12-Week Year, and it changes us. Instead of having a full year, 12-month year, you kind of have
Yes.
now quarters. You have
Yes.
little shorter stops. And I use those shorter stops as a time to assess not just, where am I with my goals in life, but
Yes.
also things like this, do a little
Yes.
assessment. Let's get some receipts together and do all of that, because
Yes.
tax time is always so stressful for myself and for many people, just
Many
trying to go
people.
through. Yes.
Yeah.
Suddenly you have a whole shoebox full of receipts, and there must be a better way. So,
Exactly. And there is. There is.
what is it? Tell me.
So using online applications such
Mhm.
as Wave,
Mhm.
QuickBooks Online, those tools can be used to record your transactions, record your expenses,
Mhm.
even your sales tax, right?
Mhm.
So you're able to go in, sync your bank accounts, and generate reports. So
Mhm.
instead of you having to do the calculations manually, looking through all the receipts, you can use these tools to help you um, to save you time,
Mhm.
keep good record keeping, as well as generate these reports that you're able to look at your numbers and know where you stand.
Mhm. Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
the idea of not even having to keep the receipts and have them all there for me sounds fantastic. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Let's transition it. I
Yes.
know that for a lot of people, you might not have ever had to file taxes for someone who has passed before. So first of all,
Mhm.
before we get into the whole process of filing taxes, what are some things that they're going to need to gather some information that they're going to need to have when filing taxes for someone who has passed?
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, um, either the person who is the legal representative or the executor for the individual who has passed, they will have to get the person's social insurance number,
Mhm.
their T4 slips, um, maybe their places of employment.
Mhm.
If they are self employed, they may not be able to um, source those documents for self employment, but they would definitely have to do some research to come up with historical estimates.
Mhm.
Um, Finding the individual's last income tax return definitely helps provide a kind of history to contact employers or other
Mhm.
sources of income to
Mhm.
get information for the deceased for that year's tax filing.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say filing a tax for some filing a tax return for someone who is deceased is similar to filing a regular tax return,
Mhm.
getting income from all sources,
Mhm.
um, finding expenses if required, um, if the person has made any charitable donations or RRSP contributions. So just retrieving all of the information that's required for regular tax filing, but also just knowing you're doing it on someone else's behalf.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm thinking about a lot of sole proprietors, and
Yeah.
especially like right now, there's a lot of people who have side hustles and businesses, and the process that would be, we talked about ourselves first, right? When it comes to
Yes.
tax preparations, and now in the event that someone should pass, and you're not prepared, right? Because you haven't been planning ahead throughout the year. Now the
Yes.
executor's role becomes much more difficult trying to
Yes.
locate all the documents, especially as like you have to do certain reporting, depending on what kind of business you're running. But if it's a small business and it's just the one person doing everything,
Yes.
that can be rather difficult. So another reminder to start doing that and using these tools, right? Any kind of digital tool, cloud tool, cloud-based tool, so
Mhm.
they have a place to start from rather than starting
Yeah.
from nothing. Mm.
And having a central location and communicating to someone that you trust where this information can be found in the
Mhm.
event of, anything unfortunate.
Yes. I'm seeing a little notification pop up. If I freeze or if anything happens, please let me know. I'm just trying to close down everything around me so that the
Okay.
Wi-Fi is as strong as it can be right here. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I know, okay, speaking again now about someone who is filing taxes for someone who has passed, I know that a lot of people might not be prepared for the influx of either cash that will be received or the amount that will be owed. Because let's say that you've got a husband and wife, you've got a pair, one spouse has passed, and now
Mhm.
they have their RRSP that they had all of their retirement funds in. That's now going to be cashed out. You have the
Yes.
house, you have all of that. So the spouse ends up with a tax bill that is
Yes.
alarming and surprising. How do they prepare for that, and what do they do to reduce how much they might have to pay? And then what do you do with those funds afterwards? Because you wanna make smart moves with the money now.
Yes. So in the event that someone passes, all of their capital property is deemed to be the gain, like either the loss or the gains are realized.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
if the person had RRSPs, those RRSPs are now part of the final return
mhm,
and would be added to the person's total income for tax purposes. Um, the CRA or I would say the person, the legal representative or the executor, they
mhm,
have to complete that person's final tax return and get a clearance certificate
mhm,
before they can distribute any property to any beneficiaries, or they can, if property is for that individual,
mhm,
they won't be able to cash in,
mhm, mhm,
until all of the affairs with the CRA have been finalized.
mhm, mhm. And now,
So,
oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No, you have me thinking about the clearance certificate because that was a question someone else had
Yes.
asked me as well, and I was like, "I'll let you answer this one." And
Yes.
with regards to the clearance certificate, so in Ontario, you'll
Yes.
go through the process of closing the state, you'll file their terminal tax return, their final tax return, and
Yes.
wait till you receive your clearance certificate from the government before you distribute anything. Now,
Exactly.
once you distribute, if they decide to reassess, we talked about that before, right? You can be
Mhm.
reassessed anywhere up to 6 years, right? I've got to keep all the forms. What
Yes.
happens if you are reassessed after you've received the clearance certificate? Because that sounds like I'm done.
Mhm.
I don't have to do anything else at this point.
So you like if you're the executor or the legal representative, you'd have to petition to the CRA
Mhm.
to let them know of the situation.
Mhm.
And you know, you'd have to make a pretty strong claim as to why you're not, able to provide that information if the individual does not have that information readily available. The clearance certificate just means that the CRA, they've acknowledged that all of the amounts have been paid and there's zero balance owing for that individual.
Mhm.
So I would say you just have to be in clear communication with the CRA, and then they would have to do their own determination to see, like, if the reassessment came back saying the individual owed,
Mhm.
then the executor unfortunately would have to clear that amount if the CRA doesn't ex- if the CRA doesn't accept that the individual didn't have the previous year's evidence available to submit. Yeah,
Okay, so what I hear is hire a professional because
definitely.
me as a layman, I am not interested in one, holding on to somebody else's tax paperwork for 6 years just in case of anything. I don't even want to hold on to mine, much less theirs. And then after thinking I am done,
Yeah,
this is just one part of closing the estate. So after
yeah,
all of that, thinking I am done now, moving on, I've finished my duties, to have to come back and
mhm,
to have, them asking for funds because I guess, right, you never know, fraud, things like that. There can be
yes,
situations where they'll come back and
mhm,
ask for what is owed, but
yeah.
me, one person, like, I would
Yeah,
not that's
I
not a
know.
responsibility I want to have, so that's something very important to know
Yes,
that even afterwards.
to keep your records, not just for yourself, right, or in a
Mhm,
location that you deem, you know, secure. You
mhm,
definitely have to communicate to others where your record keeping is and
mhm.
where you have your tax affairs.
Yes.
Mhm.
Where would you suggest that we keep our tax paperwork on that?
Um, a lot of people have it on a USB. Like
Okay.
if they create spreadsheets, they have it on a dedicated USB.
Mhm,
Maybe you can put that USB in a safety security box
mhm,
or a lock box of some kind, or in a safe
mhm,
with the rest of your important documents and have it
mhm,
clearly labeled.
mhm.
Yeah. I would say that takes up the least amount of real estate.
Yes, yes. All I'm thinking of are the receipts. It's like a
Yes.
shoebox full of receipts. Where does that go? But yes, yes. I
The
think
garage.
yeah. In our digital age, I'm very thankful that we can start making some adjustments. So we don't have all these paperwork and all of that. So that's good to
Yes.
know. Okay. Wow. Very, very good to know. Okay, so here we go. For us and for the deceased. Well, let's specifically speak about someone who has passed because I can't do much at this point. What are some things that people can be aware of that we can do to help reduce our taxes? Actually, let's do this from an estate planning perspective. So, as I'm
Mhm.
preparing my estate, I'm going through, we're listening to what we're talking about now. I want to make some moves so it's easier for my executor. What are some things I can do to help reduce how much all my family will have to be paying at the time of my passing?
I would say things like income splitting.
Okay.
If you pay your partner,
Mhm.
um, let's just say, to work under your business.
Mhm.
Those are things that would help your, business create expenses because you're paying wages.
Mhm.
Um, Also, maybe communicating with your family what you'd like to do with your estate, your
Mhm.
funds. Maybe you'd like to do some charitable donations,
Mhm.
um, because you are able to donate your assets
Mhm.
after you've passed away.
Mhm.
I think you can donate the residual of your assets up to 35 years after your death. So to provide like donation receipts.
Oh.
Yeah.
But why would I want them for that long?
Pardon? Why
Why
would
would
you
I
want
want
to?
yeah.
Well, I guess it's not really for like the everyday, family who have limited funds, but
Yes.
people who are maybe uh, pretty wealthy, they can donate their assets residually for the next 35 years and issue donation receipts.
Me. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So like as though if I have something that's being passed on generation to generation, now we can
yeah,
continue to donate,
yeah,
different items, different collectible pieces, things like that.
exactly.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know we should definitely have another session, maybe having a living will where
Mhm.
you can donate or pass on your assets to your family members or those you love in a trust.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
definitely great for another
Yes.
conversation.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, on that. So we were talking about this when we had the what's the best way to transfer the house talk with the other professionals there. And
Yes.
I'm thinking we were talking about, okay, someone is palliative
Yeah.
at end of life, not just palliative, but palliative end of life. And so
Mhm.
now we're at home, families coming through, and we're saying, okay, you know what? I want to do these things now. I don't want to
Mhm.
wait until I've passed for you to start getting things. Here, you take my ring. You, my favorite grandson, take my fancy car that you've always liked. As I start doing these things now, I'm here, I'm alert, I'm not trying to do any malicious activity, but I
Mhm.
want to be able to give these gifts and see their joy on their faces. As an executor, after the death has occurred, is there anything I need to do now with regards to the gifts that were given when you were still alive?
Um, we'll definitely have a contract in place
Mhm.
to state when the asset was passed along and the fair market value at that particular time.
Mhm.
That's very important and key
Mhm.
because you want it to be somewhat reasonable,
Mhm.
especially in the eyes of the CRA.
Mhm.
You don't want to elicit any inheritance tax for things that you've already passed on while you were alive.
Yes, yes.
Um, so I would say definitely keep that in mind. So it doesn't have to be a will that's enforced by a lawyer,
Mhm.
but keeping some kind of contract or record of each of the items and the fair market value of each of those things.
And then I just need to keep that, excuse me, I just need to keep that on record, but I don't
Exactly.
necessarily need to file that or include that in anything because it
No,
happened when the person was alive.
exactly.
Okay. Right? So as much as
But
possible.
things that are like transferred, such as like a car
Mhm.
and stuff like that, you definitely have to make sure that the asset is given to the individual and record what the fair market value is.
For the individual because 'cause they're
Yes,
receiving the gift. And
exactly.
now for me, if I am so lucky to receive the vehicle, now I've received this as an inheritance, what do I need to do? Do I need to report this? What should I do?
What should you do?
Yeah.
So, if you're a spouse or a child or dependent, um, it depends on what the item is,
Mhm.
but it could uh, be deemed like a capital gain
Mhm.
and added to the taxable income. So that's where the fair market price and the
Mhm.
value of the item is very key.
as though let's just dream big here, okay? I am given a Picasso, you know,
Yeah.
and now I've received this rather large asset, so now I'll need to ensure that one is protected, but also claim
Yes.
that because it's a Picasso.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, understood. Understood. So we can receive gifts, but be aware when you're receiving gifts that you can't just take and say thank you, but we might still have some actions that need to be
Yes.
completed.
And may have to pay capital gains. Yeah.
Even upon receiving it?
Um, well, capital gains, after the person has passed, um, because all of the individual's, assets would have been deemed
Mhm.
disposed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
On that side. Okay.
Yeah. On that side.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. This is why we have these talks now, so we can learn and share. Sorry. If you do have any questions, please feel free to add them in the comments and we will do our best to answer them. We have a few more minutes, so there is still time, but we're just going to go through some of the questions that I have here. Okay.
Minnelle,
Yes.
something very important to
Yes.
to note: timelines for
Mhm.
filing taxes of someone who is deceased.
Mhm.
So if the deceased person, passed away from January 1st to October 31st, then the deadline to file their taxes is the following year, April 30th.
Mhm.
Now, if that person passed away November to December, then it would be December 31st, then it would be 6 months after the passing.
Okay.
Also, if the individual is self employed or has a business, then the dates also differ. So, if they passed away from January 1st to October 31st, the deadline would be April 30th. And then if it's from December 1st to December 16th, then the deadline would be June 15th. And then if it's December 16th to December 31st, then the deadline would be 6 months after the person's death. So the timelines do vary if the individual is a business owner.
Mhm.
Their spouse also gets the extension on filing their taxes as well. But just note that if the deceased is owing taxes, then
Mhm.
the deadline to pay the taxes is April 30th.
Okay.
So I guess it would be in the best interest of the individual, the legal representative or the executor, to file the taxes before April 30th. That way they'll know if the deceased person is owing, and then they can pay that amount if possible so that they don't incur the 5% penalty for late filing and for paying the amount late, and
Mhm.
then the 1% each month that there is a balance owing.
That's what my next question was like, what happens if they're owing? So what happens then if like if the deceased owes taxes, but there is nothing left in the estate to cover those expenses, to cover that fee? What happens in that case?
Um, so I haven't encountered this very much,
Mhm.
but from what I've heard, the executor would be somewhat responsible for that amount owing. There, I would say I haven't really encountered that, to
Mhm,
be
mhm.
honest.
Yes.
But all I know that the executor, um, in many ways, more than one, are the ones that are responsible for paying that amount.
Hmm.
So that's
Mhm.
why, when you do choose someone to be your legal representative or executor, um, you have to definitely let them know of all the sides of the coin.
Mhm. Mhm.
It is a huge
It
responsibility.
is. It is. Yes. And basically just know before anybody else gets paid,
Yeah,
all of the debts have to be covered. Everything else,
exactly.
the house, the everything will be taken before
Yes.
anything is given. So it's
Mhm.
important. This is why we talk
Yes.
about having insurance, not just for funerals or for, you know, giving
Yeah.
one, definitely to transfer assets, but also to cover these fees. so
Yep.
that you're able to give something to the family instead of them taking everything that you have to cover the taxes. That might be surprising, like, can you
Yeah.
give us an idea, like for an
So
estate? Yeah.
for example, when someone passes away, you should the legal representative or executor should contact the CRA right away. That way, um, like the tax credits and benefits can be stopped.
Yeah. Mhm.
So things like GST, the Climate
Mhm.
Action Incentive, even the Canada Child Benefit,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So if those amounts are paid out to the individual's account after their passing, then the executor is responsible for paying those amounts back.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. That's something
Yeah,
important to know. People don't realize that. Free
yeah,
money, no.
no,
Right? It depends when it's received. Yes. Okay.
exactly.
Yes. Oh, wow. Okay. So a lot of great information. I feel like it's doom and gloom and it's scary with taxes right now. But this
Yeah,
it's just a part of what has to be done when it comes time to close an estate. And it's better to know now so we can prepare rather than scrambling at the time and trying to figure out what to do. So, any final
yes.
thoughts for those that are listening? How can we get in touch with you if they need your services?
Final thoughts. As you know, the tax season is coming to a close on April 30th.
Mhm.
Um, if you do need assistance to file your taxes, I do everything taxes. So, corporate taxes, sole proprietor if you're self employed, or if you're just an individual and maybe have a family.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I do everything taxes. You can go to my Instagram page. It's at Right Business, WRITBUSINESS. All my contact information is there, my email, my cell phone number, and you can always send a DM.
Mhm.
So that's the best way to reach me and follow along on my page.
Yes, lots of great content. I see that you're doing quite a few lives and interviews
Yes,
and things such as this. So the more that we are engaged, the more that we're learning these things, the better prepared we are. And then we're able to share the message so that others can be prepared as well. So thank
yes.
you. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
me. Thank you
much.
for coming on today. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Minna.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
I will see you all in 2 weeks for another episode of Ending Well with Minnelle. I believe that's going to be a solo episode with me sharing about talking to our parents, I believe. All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Have a good night.